For years, Washington, D.C. residents were told a reassuring story: crime was falling. Official reports claimed violent crime was declining, property thefts were under control, and the nation's capital was finally shaking off its reputation as one of America's most dangerous cities. But behind the glossy headlines and polished press conferences, another story was being written, one the public was never meant to see. Whispers began surfacing in community forums, victim advocacy groups, and even among retired officers. Crimes weren't being solved, they were being hidden. Sexual assaults reclassified as lesser offenses. Burglaries downgraded to lost property. Even homicides, according to some insiders, were occasionally shuffled into ambiguous categories to keep the murder rate from spiking. Now, federal investigators have turned their gaze toward the Metropolitan Police Department of Washington, D.C. What they've uncovered so far suggests something more than simple clerical errors. It suggests a willful neglect of crime statistics, a deliberate manipulation of the data that determines not only public perception but also federal funding, policy decisions, and the very safety of America's capital. At the heart of the scandal lies a haunting question: how safe can a city truly be if the truth itself is a casualty? And as the evidence piles up, the picture becomes clear: this is not just a D.C. problem. It's a blueprint of what happens when law enforcement agencies across the country decide that image is more important than integrity. In mid-August, the U.S. Department of Justice opened an investigation into whether Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, manipulated or otherwise misrepresented crime data to make trends appear more favorable. The inquiry, described by multiple outlets, focuses on whether violent incidents were undercounted, downgraded in classification, or cleared in ways that made performance appear stronger than it truly was. Why does that matter? In D.C., crime data is more than politics. It influences public safety strategy, council oversight, grant funding, and public trust. MPD's own site warns that its daily numbers are preliminary, use D.C. code definitions, not FBI numbers, and are subject to change as cases are reclassified, an important caveat that is legitimate when used properly. But that very flexibility is also where manipulation, if it occurred, can hide. At the same time, the district has public-facing, clearance rate, dashboards, quarterly, that show what percentage of certain violent crimes result in a closure, by arrest or other means. Those rates swing by quarter, and their publication is mandated by local law, another data point now likely to get a forensic audit. To understand how numbers can drift, you need to know the workflow. MPD, like most big agencies, records incidents in a records management system, RMS. MPD uses Mark 43, classifies them under local code, and later submits to federal programs, NIBRS/Uniform Crime Reports. MPD has internal SOPs for UCR classification and case tracking. On paper, they're designed to keep titles accurate and clearance reporting consistent. In practice, the complexity creates many choke points. 3 common pressure points in big city policing. Initial classification: is that robbery or simple theft? Is that an aggravated assault with a weapon or just threats? Reclassification after an investigation: downgrading when injuries seem minor, or when evidence feels squishy. Exceptional clearance: closing a case without an arrest because a suspect is known but can't be arrested, deceased, uncooperative victim, jurisdictional barrier, etc. Overuse of exceptional clearances has been a problem in cities nationwide and can make success look rosier than it is. If leadership culture implicitly rewards good numbers, 1,000 tiny decisions can flow in the same direction. That's the heart of DOJ's question in D.C. Were those tiny decisions organic, or orchestrated? Publicly, D.C. leaders have, at times, pointed to improving metrics, specific drops in categories, claims about trends, and enforcement steps. Local reporting this month shows a nuanced picture. Some measures improved, others didn't, and the story shifts depending on whether you read MPD dashboards, FBI/NIBRS, or local, indexed definitions. That normal friction is now overshadowed by the allegation that data itself may have been groomed to resist calls for federal intervention. Meanwhile, context matters. The D.C. auditor has already flagged MPD for structural issues that indirectly affect data integrity, including staffing gaps among investigators and limits in analytical capacity. That's not manipulation per se, but it's the kind of environment in which backlogs and reclassifications proliferate, and where a numbers first culture can skew the ledger. Based on prior DOJ and Inspector General audits of police grants and reporting, expect the feds to mirror the following approach. Case sampling: pull a statistically valid sample of incident reports over several years, across districts and units. Source triangulation: compare RMS entries to CAD/9/11 audio, hospital ED logs, body-worn camera metadata, and FBI NIBRS submissions. Timeline drift: track reclassifications over time. What percentage of assaults downgrade after 7, 30, or 90 days? Who approved the change? Clearance validity: audit exceptional clearances against DOJ criteria. Did victim not cooperating become a sandbox for difficult cases? Command influence: review emails, chat logs, Comstat decks, and performance reviews for implicit or explicit pressure to move the needle. Whistleblower files: secure copies of any internal complaints or memos from analysts, crime scene techs, or district commanders raising alarms. This is slow, document-heavy work. But it's how you separate normal data housekeeping from willful neglect or intention to mislead. From open sources and common auditing experience, 5 indicators often show up where numbers aren't clean. Asymmetric downgrades: serious offenses retitled to less serious ones at significantly higher rates than peer cities. Quarter-end miracles: spikes in clearances at the end of reporting periods, followed by reversals later. Unit outliers: a particular district or commander whose area consistently looks best in class, even after controlling for demographics, seasonality, and deployment. Victim-driven attrition: over-reliance on victim refused to cooperate to justify exceptional clearance, especially in categories where victim fear is predictable: domestic violence, gun assaults. Dashboard versus NIBRS discord: large deltas between what MPD posts on local dashboards and what ultimately hits federal databases, beyond the normal definitional differences already disclosed by MPD. MPD openly states local dashboards don't mirror NIBRS. The question is whether that gap was prudential or strategic. The Washington Post reported that DOJ is probing whether MPD manipulated data to make crime rates appear lower, escalating a political fight over federal oversight. Fox News likewise cited sources confirming a DOJ look at possible data manipulation in the nation's capital. Different editorial lens, same core claim: DOJ is looking. Police One, a trade outlet read by law enforcement professionals, also summarized that DOJ is investigating whether DC police officials falsified crime data. MPD's own pages hedge properly: daily data are preliminary and not NIBRS. Those disclosures are sensible and common. They will not shield intentional patterning if the DOJ finds it. Quarterly clearance rates are posted by law. Any inconsistencies there, once tied back to source files, will be telling. The DC auditor has urged stronger analytics and staffing, a background condition that can produce poor data hygiene absent firm controls. I've seen the same movie in other cities, sometimes malicious, often cultural. Target fixation: when Comstat turns into scoreboard obsession, supervisors coach to the metric, not the mission. If promotions, praise, or political breathing room hinge on a red arrow turning green, human nature does the rest. Definition dodge: local codes don't always map cleanly to NIBRS. That's fine, until local definition becomes a catch-all to down-title incidents that plainly meet higher severity elements. Clearance creep: exceptional clearances are legal. Overused, they become a pressure release valve. Victim won't testify. Case closed. Suspect named by nickname in the notes. Case cleared. Technically plausible, operationally dishonest. Capacity gaps: understaffed detective bureaus squeeze triage decisions. Non-fatal shootings get priority, everything else waits. While it waits, titles get nudged, or go stale. The DC auditor's finding of investigator shortages is a red flag for exactly this dynamic. Political overlay: in a capital city, crime narratives are weapons. That creates strong incentives, on all sides, to cherry-pick stats. The antidote is open methodology and third-party replication. To be clear, allegations are still allegations. But if DOJ eventually uses a phrase like willful neglect, expect findings such as repeated failures to reconcile CAD calls to RMS incidents, leaving serious calls without matching reports. Systemic downgrades, e.g., robbery, theft from person, aggravated assault, simple assault, clustered in certain districts in certain months. Anomalous clusters of exceptional clearances attributed to victim non-cooperation, without documented attempts to recontact the victim. Internal communications encouraging alignment of numbers with public goals, never explicitly saying, fake it, but functionally amounting to the same. A small circle of approvers with remarkably high reclassification authority. Those are the skeleton keys that open past cases. They're what auditors will test here. We tend to treat data like PR, but it's triage. Dirty stats misallocate cops and dollars. If gun assaults are down, on paper, ShotSpotter coverage gets trimmed or redeployed. If robberies become thefts, street robbery units shrink or are reassigned. If domestic violence is simple, advocacy referrals and lethality assessments don't get triggered as often. If clearances look great, witness protection and victim services funding can stagnate. In short, fudged numbers produce real-world risk. If you want to know why some corners feel abandoned, sometimes the answer is, the spreadsheet says they're fine. If DOJ or an independent monitor substantiates manipulation, the remedy isn't just a press conference. It's plumbing. Dual-track reporting, publish both DC code classifications and NIBRS conforming categories side by side, with a clear, version-controlled change log. MPD already warns about differences, make the mapping explicit and downloadable. Immutable audit trails, every reclassification, every clearance change, must keep a non-editable hash and user/timestamp, surfaced on dashboards, not hidden in the database. Body-worn camera/NIBRS reconciliation, randomly sample BWC confirmed incidents against RMS titles quarterly. Create a public variance score for each district commander. Exceptional clearance gatekeeping, require a short checklist tied to DOJ criteria. If the boxes aren't verifiably checked, the RMS blocks the status change. Third-party replication, allow universities or the DC auditor to ingest anonymized line-level incident data on a delay and reproduce public dashboards. Publish their replication reports, pass or fail. Whistleblower channels, contract with an external ombuds for analysts and officers to report quota pressure. No internal routing, no retaliation. Performance metrics reset, reward crime harm index reductions, fewer shootings, fewer repeat victimizations, rather than raw, down arrows. When you change what you count, you change what people chase. These are just definitional differences. Sometimes true, ask for side-by-side NIBRS mapping. If they won't show it, that's your tell. Clearances are up, our detectives are crushing it. Ask for the split between arrests versus exceptional clearances, then read the DOJ criteria they used. This is a witch hunt. Demands document trails. Either the hashes, emails, and logs exist or they don't. Daily dashboard says X. Daily dashboards are preliminary. The question is whether the later changes were validated or convenient. It's also true that not all negative narratives stick. An independent national assessment last year gave MPD unusually high marks in several policing domains while recommending improvements, further evidence that the department is not a monolith of bad faith and that reform is possible. And to keep perspective, big city crime data is hard. Victims recant. Injuries evolve. Elements aren't always clear on scene. Honest errors happen. The difference between sloppiness and scheme is pattern, intent, and benefit. If DOJ substantiates manipulation, expect leadership accountability, suspensions, demotions, or resignations among data/ComStat and investigative command staff. Consent decree light, a memorandum of agreement with the feds focused on data governance, not use of force, unless the probe widens. Dashboard overhaul, a rebuild with open schemas, version code, and independent replication. Funding strings, federal grants tied to demonstrable data integrity milestones, a playbook DOJ has used before. If DOJ does not find intentional manipulation, expect a strong recommendation package anyway: more analysts, cleaner RMS to NIBRS mapping, and stricter clearance standards, most of which the DC auditor has implicitly previewed. Read the footnotes. MPD's dashboards come with caveats. Use them. Ask for the mapping. Demand public, machine-readable crosswalks between DC code titles and NIBRS categories, with version history. Push for replication. Tell your council member you want third-party recreation of dashboards by local universities or the DC auditor. Focus on harm, not headlines. Track shootings, repeat victimization, and survivor services, measures harder to gain. The nation's capital should be the gold standard for public safety transparency. Right now, it's under a microscope because the numbers, the bedrock of policy, might not be what they seem. Whether this turns out to be clerical chaos, cultural drift, or willful neglect with a paper trail, the remedy is the same: radical auditability. You fix data the way you fix police work, with sunlight, supervision, and systems that make the right thing the easy thing. Until then, one rule for readers, voters, and viewers: trust dashboards that let you see their guts. Everything else is just a headline.